lawn care and home home improvement and stuff like that. This is part of the business I own. The first thing I'm going to talk about is cutting grass. With grass, you need to be precise. You need to have detail. There's certain ways you have to run your mower in order to get the stripes as you see in the photo below. You need to be patient as well, because sometimes you have to go over the yard 3 or 4, I would say about 2 or 3 times in order to get an even nice cut. The next thing I'm going to talk about is landscaping. You do need to be detail oriented. This involves some math skills to get the square footage and make sure the plants are aligned straight and even, as well as the mulching. You need to be able to have the square foot for the mulching itself, so you know how much you need, how many loads, and then you need to be able to calculate the math. Next thing is staining. When you're staining, you need also math, and you also need patience, because sometimes you do need to go over this. We usually do about twice. It depends on how damaged the wood was before. It also depends on if you have to do repairs or not. But with staining, you need to have an even spray. You need to be so far back. You also need to be able to, as you can see in the picture, lines. You need to be able to have perfect lines. You need to be so far away so you don't spray yourself or have an overspray. And then also, and right here, there's a shield, and that's how we shield around stairs, concrete, brick, so the overspray don't get on the house as well. For pressure washing, you also need to be a certain distance away so you don't crack or break the fascia, depending on if there is fascia or not on the house. Usually there is. Sometimes you have to use TSP. It's a certain chemical that helps with mold and the green algae you see on houses sometimes if you're near like a pond or a lake or even the river. Next is tree removal. With trees, it depends on how close or how far it is from a house or a shed or anything like that. You have to make sure you're cutting in a certain direction. You have to be patient. You cannot move fast so you don't have to damage anything. And also, you have to be able to lay the tree down flat. Make sure it don't hit too fast, too hard. Usually we use chainsaws, and if we climb the tree, you have to have your safety gear. If you don't have your safety gear, it can be hazardous. I've seen people cut their body, their clothes, their pants. Next is deck building. You have to be precise. You have to know your measurements. You have to use a tape measure, and this also includes the pressure washing and staining. You have to pressure wash and stain the decks as well, but that comes between a year and 2 years after you build the deck. If the deck isn't even, it could not be as sturdy. You need to make sure everything's precise. Firewood, we use a log splitter, so you have to cut it into a certain amount of pieces, certain sizes. With the log splitter, you need to be cautious because you could easily cut your hand, cut your finger, get stuck in the machine itself. Christmas lights, we have to climb on ladders. We have to get on roofs, depending on how big the roof is, how slanted, anything like that. It depends on the colors. You need to be able to know your measurements to see how many strings of lights you need. You also have to meet the customer's requirements and standards and make sure they like it. For pond restoration, you use a certain amount of dye, chemicals. You can't consume. You have to have your safety gear. You have to clear out the algae before you dye anything. You have to clean out the bottom of the pond as well. And you also have to have a certain amount deep that it has to be for the water, so the water doesn't leak or anything like that. And for flooring, this also requires measurements. Most of our work requires measurements, but we use saws and everything else. In the picture, I am not wearing safety gear, but I have been doing it for a couple of years. But I was cautious. You have to Make sure your cuts are even and precise because you don't want no gaps when you lay your floor. You don't want the floor to show if it's under a door frame. You don't want the underlayment to show. The underlayment helps with the softness. Some of it helps with water, keeping water out, the moisture. Some helps with how it feels when you walk, and it also helps the floor expand as well. Your floor will expand, so you need to know how much and how far the floor could expand depending on what floor you lay. If you have dogs, you have to lay a certain type of floor, scratch-proof floor. You don't have to, but we recommend it for you to lay a certain type of scratch-proof floor, wood floor. There's laminate, there's vinyl. We mostly lay vinyl and hardwood floor. That is all the information I have that we do in our lawn care business. If there's any more questions, everyone's free to ask. Thank you.